I noticed that every so often somebody pitches me a softball. Right? They just throw something out there that's like begging for me to respond to it. And sometimes I watch it first before I react, but this one I'm seeing with completely fresh eyes. PragerU. Remember PragerU, the neoconservative, pro-war conservative YouTube channel? They made a video called, I kid you not, Is Maoism Coming to America? I'm going to react to that video right now. This is going to be fun. It's just asking for it. I got my little red book right here. Behind me, I got a whole shelf of books about China, when China shakes the world, the Chinese economy. I've studied the 100-Day War of William Hinton and all of that. Okay, let's see PragerU say, is Maoism coming to America? Let's see it. Let's see this. This is going to be a cringe fest. And, hey, look, I'm telling you, I think Trump is the lesser of two evils in this election. I don't hate conservatives. I hate neocon anti-communists who get us into stupid wars by telling regime change lies. And that is, I can assure you what this video is going to be. Take it away, PragerU.
Dong, the murderous dictator of communist China from 1949 to 1976.
Look, we're right there. All right, murderous dictator of China. How much did the life expectancy in China go up in those years? How many Chinese people, right there, how many Chinese people learned to read and write during those years? You do realize that there were children in China who only because of Mao, they were able to see the sun, because they would work children in mines because they were small, and they would wake them up early in the morning before the sun came up, and they would not let them come out of the mine until late at night. There are children who saw the sun because of Mao Zedong. There are people who never saw a doctor in their lives, but thanks to Mao's Barefoot Doctor program, they got medical care for the first time in their lives because of Mao. Mao carried out actions that caused China's population to greatly expand. Right? I mean, Mao saved millions of lives by taking the sick man of Asia and starting it on the course of being the second largest economy in the world. But murderous dictator. All right, we're starting out right there, right? Apparently everything was fine and dandy, and then Mao came along and said, I want to murder and dictate a bunch of people. Oh, God, here we go.
Probably responsible for more death and misery than any single human being ever.
Oh, really? That's funny, because he sure made China a modern country, and he sure lifted millions of people out of poverty. And, he created a modern farming system and a modern education system, and he built the first steel mills in China. And he saved millions of Chinese women from being, forced prostitutes. The Shanghai ports were, centers of human trafficking that he broke apart. He rescued millions of people from opium addiction. He redistributed land to the peasants, and peasants got, who used to, wow. He saved millions and millions of people and started China on the road of being a modern country. But no. He killed more than anybody else. Okay. If you call saving lives killing people, yeah, there you go. All right. Yeah, there we go.
If you think Mao's monstrous reign is ancient history and has no relevance to the world we live in today, think again.
I don't think that. I think because of Mao Zedong, China is now the second largest economy in the world, and 800 million people have been lifted from poverty. And the world's largest power plant, the Three Gorges Dam, has been created, and the world's largest telecommunication manufacturer has been created, and half the steel in the world is made in Chinese steel industry. So yes, I do think Mao is very, very relevant today. And that's why Mao's picture is all over China. And right now they're having kind of a Maoist revival in China. I think what Mao did in China, despite the mistakes he made, I don't think the Cultural Revolution was correct. But I do think that, yes, Mao, what he did in China is very, very, very relevant in what's going on today. I don't think it's not relevant. But I think if you think all Mao did was kill people, you're a dumbass.
The tactics Mao used to take over and ruin China in the middle of the 20th century.
Ruin China. Look at China today. Look at what China was before Mao took over. Ruin China. Is this man an idiot? Is his brain on backwards? Ruin China. He's making it look like China fell apart. He says Mao ruined China. On what fucking planet did Mao ruin China, you dumbass? How can you just say that with a straight face? Like, you look at what China was before 1949, you look at what China was by the 1950s, you look at what China was in the 70s, you look at what China is today. Mao ruined China. You fucking idiot. How can you say that with a straight face? Only because I'm not there to argue with you. Only because the only socialist you ever debate is some Bernie bro who hates Mao just as much as you do. That's the only reason you get away with saying something so fucking stupid, right? I mean, my God, we all can agree that Hitler was a brutal mass murderer, but nobody can deny that Hitler had great economic achievements for his first 3 years in power. But for some reason, you just get up there and lie. Communism never did anything. Wow, how did China become a superpower? Who invented space travel? Who defeated Hitler? How is it the Soviet Union became electrified? My God, right? And they just lie like this. They only get away with this. They only get away with this because there's no real communists in the room. They got a bunch of Trotskyite liberals who agree, oh, that's true, but it wasn't real communism. My God, right off the bat, what a lying. Look at this graphic, right? That is like the exact opposite of what happened to China. That's what's happening to our country right now. That should be the United States of America. Listen, buddy, right now in America, they're unpaving the roads while China is bringing roads to the most mountainous regions of Tibet, right? China's building highways in Tibet, and the most mountainous regions are getting roads, and people are being lifted out of poverty. Here in America, they're unpaving the roads in Alabama. They're unpaving the roads in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. I mean, what in the world is wrong with you?
Are the same tactics the modern left is using to take over and ruin America in the 21st century.
That's right. The modern left is creating 5-year economic plans and mobilizing the population to industrialize the United States of America. That's exactly what they're doing, right? The modern left is redistributing land to peasants. We don't even have any peasants here. Oh my God. What the heck? The modern left. You really want me to believe that pink-haired pronoun police on the college campuses are doing the same thing that peasants lifted out of poverty, women who emerged with unbound feet, did in the 1950s and 60s in China? Right there, like, anyone who thinks that there's any comparison between what Mao did, taking a society held in semi-feudal extreme conditions of poverty and industrializing and modernizing it, is the same as annoying people. You're racist. I'm going to tweet at you on their cell phones. Right there, you are completely nuts if you think either of those things are the same. I mean, right now, this is wow.
Mao called this Marxism with Chinese characteristics.
Actually, no. The phrase socialism with Chinese characteristics wasn't used in China until Deng Xiaoping, you fucking idiot. And it's not Marxism with Chinese characteristics. It's socialism with Chinese characteristics. And that term came into use after Mao died, and it was adopted by Deng Xiaoping in 1978. So right there, this guy has no fucking clue what he's talking about. How do they just let him get on here and talk like this, right? You can criticize China and you can criticize Mao, but you have to know what you're fucking talking about. I'm sorry, I get really angry about this. These people who have no fucking clue what they're talking about.
What we now call woke, the radical leftism that tells us men give birth, that to be colorblind
is that what Mao believed? Mao believed that men give birth?
Is to be racist, that social workers should replace police officers, could easily be called Maoism with.
How in the hell could that be called Maoism? I'm sorry. No, tell me, how in the world are you telling me that homosexuality was illegal in China, you idiot? My God. Oh my God. So you're telling me that you don't like the left because they think men can get pregnant. And that's the same as what Mao did in China. This is like, this level of stupid shouldn't be allowed.
Characteristics. So let's define Maoism, and then we'll get to its American characteristics. In 1949, Mao took over China and held power for 3 decades using a very simple tactic: the dark art of demonizing your enemy.
Okay, let's talk about this. Demonizing your enemy. All right. Now, doesn't that go on in all politics? Communists certainly do that. Anti-communists do that. Liberal Democrats do that. Fascists do that. Isn't he demonizing his enemy right now? Woke people? Like, this is the dumbest. So there you go. The dark art of demonizing your enemy. Bum, bum, bum. Which anyone who's ever in politics does.
I call it hatecraft.
Brilliant. Hatecraft. That's deep, bro. That's deep.
What Mao did was divide everyone in China into two categories: the people, who agreed with his agenda, and the enemies of the people, who did not agree with his agenda.
Actually, no. There were, peasantry. There were factory workers. There's the block of four classes that's listed on the Chinese flag. The urban proletariat. Etc. They did. That's not true. That is not true. That is just not true. I don't even know. Like, he divided it between the people who agreed with his agenda and people who did not agree. I think that's what the Bush administration did, right? You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. You're either with us or you're with Al-Qaeda.
For the enemies, no quarter was given. They were blocking progress, so they had to be destroyed.
But I thought there was no progress. I thought they just impoverished the whole place. So there was progress, or there wasn't.
They weren't even considered people. Not to have a correct political orientation, Mao said, is like not having a soul.
Yes, that's a big emphasis in Mao Zedong thought, is a struggle for political line. But that doesn't mean you're not a person, right? That's not even what that quote even means. It means that, you should struggle and argue for the correct political line. It doesn't mean people who disagree with you should be killed and are not people.
Anything Mao did to them was therefore justified. These enemies, prosperous farmers, landowners, and other so-called counter-revolutionaries, were prohibited from earning a living, were subjected to random arrest, and had their property confiscated.
You do know what the 4 stars on the Chinese flag stood for, right? It was the peasantry, the workers, the urban capitalists, and the national bourgeoisie. So these other classes had a star on the flag. And you also know those other classes were different classifications. Unfortunately, during the Cultural Revolution, there was a lot of discrimination against people based on, their background. But there were different classifications. It wasn't just the people and the enemy of the people, like he said earlier.
He went to thought reform prisons to wash their brains of their incorrect values. And those...
You do know we do the same thing here. That's called rehabilitation. Right? Generally, if you commit a crime, in order to get released from prison, if you get parole, you have to show that you've rehabilitated yourself. That's what thought reform was. It was, if you had tried to violently overthrow the communists, you had to show that you changed your views, right? That's called rehabilitation. That's generally what that's called.
Lucky ones. Countless more were simply executed for having the wrong opinion. America is not Mao's China.
No. I thought it was Mao's China. I thought that's the whole fucking point of the video.
No one is being lined up and shot for their counter-revolutionary beliefs.
Actually, yeah, this country has lined up and shot a lot of people for being communists. This country is right now backing a brutal regime in Ukraine that is murdering thousands and thousands of people just for loving their homeland and just for being proud of the Soviet Union and its anti-fascism. Right now, this country is backing Israel as it murders and genocides the Palestinians and is bombing and killing them. So yes, actually, the American government is killing all kinds of people for their beliefs and for just being who they are. And I think if you read the history of the Wobblies, you read about the Black Panthers, Fred Hampton, who was murdered in his bed. There is a long history of people in America being killed for their views. I don't know what that has to do with America not being China.
But the tactics, the hatecraft employed by the American left borrow heavily from Mao's playbook. Here are some examples. COVID-19 was a health catastrophe because anti-vaxxers selfishly ignored the safety of their fellow citizens and wouldn't get the vaccine.
I don't think that.
The people versus the enemies of the people.
That's what Joe Biden said. That's not what China said. That's not what Russia said. In fact, they accused China and Russia and the communists of spreading vaccine disinformation. That was what they alleged. So how is any communist government responsible for that? Right? How is any communist government responsible for liberals demonizing people around the vaccine mandates? I'm not following.
Our planet is at risk of total destruction because climate change deniers won't acknowledge the obvious fact that fossil fuels are putting too much CO2 in the atmosphere. The people.
In fact, those are the talking points the U.S. government uses to prevent China from building coal power plants in Africa. You do know that. The climate treaty and all of that is wildly unfair, and it's used to prevent China and the communists from engaging in economic development in the third world. You do realize that, right? Joe Biden even said in his essay, America Must Lead Again, that part of his anti-climate change agenda would be to stop China's economic development and building of coal power plants around the world.
Versus the enemies of the people. Even our democracy is threatened by those deplorables who support fascist candidates.
But I thought communists were against democracy. Now I'm confused. So liberals and mainstream media demonizing people with anti-government views is the same as anti-government views from China, right? You know, the views of people around the world that support Russia and China are the same as the people in America that want to silence people who support Russia and China. Yeah, you pretty much lost me there, Terry. I'm sorry, not Terry, James or whatever his name is. Terry's our good friend. She's in the chat. But yeah, you lost me there, my friend. You lost me.
The people versus the enemies of the people. Mao combined his hatecraft with a formula he called unity, criticism, unity. Here's how it worked. The state announced the need for national unity. Everyone was invited to join.
That's actually called unity, struggle, unity. And it was a method of engaging with people one-on-one. It was a method that the party approached the masses.
Those who resisted, however, were made to recognize their crimes and to confess them. If that required some torture, well, that was a small price to pay for unity. If they...
You're talking specifically about the Cultural Revolution, because Mao also launched the 100 Flowers campaign, where they were practically begging people to criticize the government. Mao launched the New Democracy. Like, you know, you do realize Mao was in power from 1949 until his death in 1976. It wasn't the same the entire time. You do realize that. And that unity, struggle, unity was a theory of how the Chinese Communist Party could mobilize the population, right? And that what you're describing here is the way, you know, certain dissidents were targeted during the Cultural Revolution, which started in 1966 and ended when Mao died in 1976. So, yeah, you're already not being clear, right? Mao was in power for quite some time, and you're talking about a specific period in the last years of his life, and you're using a concept, unity, struggle, unity, which was about how the communists were able to come to power. They unified with mass sentiments. They struggled where the masses disagreed with them, and they unified again. Like that was a tactic about how they took power.
Continued to resist, they were purged. That is, destroyed. Only then could society arrive at what Mao called a new unity on a new basis.
That is not correct at all, right? Unity, struggle, unity was a method of the Communist Party winning over mass support among the population.
That was how progress was achieved.
I thought there was no progress. I thought they didn't raise millions out of poverty. I thought they didn't industrialize. I thought it just turned into a giant black hole, like you said in your earlier stream.
Today, the same formula is in play. We might imagine a diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI coordinator in a business or university saying, "We just want a place where everyone feels like they belong, but because of systemic racism and sexism, some members of our community don't feel included."
And you realize the obnoxious people who use these buzzwords are the exact same people who hate Russia and hate China and think we need to wage wars against them to spread human rights.
But who's responsible for that systemic racism and sexism? Answer: anyone who doesn't agree with the DEI worldview, which would include most of the people in the room. This privileged majority must acknowledge their own complicity in this systemic oppression or risk being purged.
Yeah, this is being done by the same people who also cancel you if you defend China, if you defend legitimate Marxism and don't go along with their woke shit. And this is being promoted by the military industrial complex. This is being promoted by Boeing and major corporations. What in the world does this have to do with China and Mao Zedong? This has nothing to do with this. You're describing something that's done by wealthy, imperialist, monopolistic corporations that used to dominate China until they had their revolution.
Or, in today's terms, canceled. Only then can we all move forward together into a new, sustainable, and inclusive future. In Mao's China, the process was so vicious that people would do almost anything to avoid being tagged an enemy of the people. Thus, they were made to conform.
Made to conform. Kind of like you are making everyone conform by hating Russia and hating China and going along with your neoconservative campaigns to spread human rights.
Today in America, you're not called an enemy of the people. You're
called an anti-Semite for disagreeing with Israel. Oh, but that's what PragerU does, right? Right? Is that what they're called? Doesn't PragerU say that anyone who disagrees with Israel should be banned from their college campus? Wasn't there a truck driving around Harvard University with the faces of students who signed a petition opposing Israel on it, and they got canceled, and that PragerU defended? Do you remember that? Yeah, I mean, isn't that what they
called racist,
transphobic,
or homophobic,
or anti-Semite, How about that? Or anti-Semite for disagreeing with Israel. Oh, but that's fine. It's totally fine. Cancel culture, thought conformity is fine as long as it's for disagreeing with Israel.
Something phobic, and the fear of that is enough to make most people conform.
Right. And that's fine as long as it's in defense of Israel.
This is pure Maoism.
No, it's not. It's something that goes on in every society to some degree or other. It's something that went on a massive scale in this country during the McCarthy period. Conformity is something human beings tend to enforce in all groups, and fucking neocons like them were the worst about it during the Bush years. I remember, my God, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. Oh, you don't support invading Iraq based on lies about weapons of mass destruction? You must be a terrorist supporter. You deserve to be thrown in Guantanamo. You hate our troops.
During his notorious Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976.
See, I got the years right, but notice that they don't distinguish any difference between any of the times in which Mao was in power, right? So already they're talking about enemies of the people, and they're misusing unity, struggle, unity. They're talking about concepts they don't understand. And now he admits the Cultural Revolution was only the last 10 years of Mao's life, when Mao was very, very old, and Lin Biao and the Gang of Four were running things. And he admits that, but then he tried to say that the Cultural Revolution was in the entire time Mao was in power. So he has no clue what he's talking about.
Mao recruited his Red Guard right out of high school and college. Students were encouraged to denounce long-cherished Chinese values and to publicly humiliate their rightist teachers and professors.
Man, it was awful. It was wrong.
Even family members were not immune to their attacks.
Yeah, and it was wrong.
The students did all these things and more, including desecrating historic and religious sites. The parallels to...
Is that kind of like how they're burning World War II memorials in Donbass now in the name of anti-communism? Is that what that's like?
Modern American campuses aren't exact, of course, but they're close enough for alarm. Mao's been dead for almost half a...
Yeah, except they're defending the very system that Mao fought against and broke to have China become free from, fought his whole life to free China from. And they're doing it in the name of values that Mao didn't agree with, like transgenderism, like, all kinds of stuff that has nothing to do with anything that Mao taught. Right? I believe at one point during the Cultural Revolution, abortion was illegal in China. So what's happening on the campuses is being done in the name of completely different values. But I guess it must be like China, because all bad things are communist, right? How many brutal US-backed military dictatorships were there? In the Philippines, in Chile, in Argentina, where they brutally suppressed and terrorized anyone who believed in communism, right? And they dropped them out of helicopters or disappeared students in the middle of the night. But I guess that's nothing like what's going on now, where they're demonizing dissidents. No, it's only like communism. It's only like communism, right? There's never been a brutal U.S.-backed regime that tortures people and disappears them. No. If something is bad, it must be like communism, because everyone knows communism is bad, right? I mean, this is infuriating.
Century, but Maoism is alive and well in America.
No, it's alive and well in China, and that's why China is soaring economically and America is falling apart, because we have your economic theories in practice here that say that the market is always the answer and greed is good, and that we have no obligation to anybody, individualism above all else. No one needs any health care. No one needs any jobs. The government should just let the people go, because we're practicing your economics here in America and it's falling apart. Meanwhile, in China, they've adjusted their socialism. They're not doing the Mao thing anymore, but they've adjusted it to socialism with Chinese characteristics, which came from Deng Xiaoping and not Mao, and they're doing very, very well. So
we call it woke, but it's really Maoism with American characteristics.
No, it's actually the Congress for Cultural Freedom program. Look at the roots of the Frankfurt School and how the Frankfurt School was promoted by the CIA as an alternative to genuine Marxism, Leninism. Woke was invented by American intelligence as an alternative to genuine Marxism. You'll notice the woke people never talk about the means of production and central planning and the tendency of the falling rate of profit or any standard Marxism. They just talk about, oh, mean people are fascists. They're Adorno followers. They're Sontag followers. They have no understanding of Marxist economics whatsoever.
It must be stopped before it destroys our country. And we can only stop it.
Is that what happened to China? Did China get destroyed? How's China doing, right?
If we understand it, learn its tactics, and expose them.
You clearly do not understand it whatsoever. You have absolutely no clue what is going on.
Consider yourself warned. I'm James Lindsay, founder of New Discourses for Prager University.
And you're also an idiot. And you are a complete... I mean, my God. I mean, how can they just say things that are so opposite of the truth? So opposite of the truth. I mean, they get concepts wrong. They don't do their homework. I mean, China just completely went to the shit since the communists. I mean, how do they say this? It's infuriating to me. It really, really makes me genuinely angry. You know, it makes me genuinely angry. Genuinely angry.